We are looking at figure 21.3 on page 452 of your textbook. This graph just shows us a simple market. So for instance, on the vertical axis we have price, and on the horizontal axis we have quantity. Then we have a simple demand curve and supply curve. Now for those students who had economics 1, you'd remember this graph quite well. It just shows simple upward sloping supply and downward sloping demand curves. Now we want to encourage free trade. We want people to be able to trade with different countries without being taxed or charged or restricted in any amount. So we want to encourage free trade, but sometimes it's good for the environment if we don't have free trade. If it restricts things, that's bad for the environment. So we want to restrict, for instance, the trade of endangered species, or we want to restrict the trade of cars, maybe that emits a high level of carbon dioxide. But when you restrict the imported amount, it's very important that you also restrict your domestic suppliers. So you can't discriminate against the imported producer. You can't say, for instance, you have to pay a tax because your product harms the environment, but a local producer makes the same thing, and you don't ask them to pay the same tax. So let's say this is the demand of supply of something that's actually kind of bad for the environment, like a car that emits a high amount of CO2. So for instance, SUV. It's big cars that emit a lot of CO2. Now there's a demand in my economy for those cars and a supply. If I don't trade at all with the international market, I have a local quantity of, let's say, Q1 and at a local price of P1. But let's say I decide I'm going to start trading SUVs with the rest of the world. Now I'm going to write a straight line like this, and I'm going to call it I. Now it's for the international market. Now what happened previously, we used the quantity of Q and at a price of P1. But the international market, we say, is so big, we can't influence the price, so the price is fixed all the way through. Let's call this the market price of the international market. So if the moment I start trading, then domestically a lot of more people have cars. So my amount of people that drive SUVs increases from Q1 to Q2, but the amount supplied by my local producer decreases to, let's say, Q0. And the difference between those two, Q2 minus Q0, is the amount I import. Can you also see my price is lower now? So it's cheaper to buy a SUV the moment you start trading, for more people drive the car. But because it's cheaper, a lot of local producers can't compete with that price, and the local amount produced decreases. Previously was Q1, now it's Q0. Now let's say, for instance, the government decides, listen, SUVs is very bad for the environment because it emits a high amount of CO2. So let's tax all the imported cars with this amount. Let me make it a blue line. So this is then I1. So this is the international price plus the tax. So it's a little bit higher. Can you see that? That's the difference between I and I1 is equal to the size of the tax. But remember, you can't discriminate. You can't tell importers they have to pay the tax and not let your local market producers also pay the tax. So we have to tax our local producers as well, and with the same amount. So this size over here should be equal to the size that we tax our suppliers as well. Okay, so the tax also decreases my supply. Now, can you see the only thing that now happened is that now the amount of people driving these cars in my country decreased from Q2 to, let's call it Q3. Why? Because it's again more expensive because of the tax. Also happened, the amount produced by the local producers is still Q0. So local producers haven't benefited from this tax at all. The only thing that happened is the international, the amount important decreased from the area Q2 minus Q0 to the area Q3 minus Q0, which is a smaller, area. So that's a decrease in my amount of cars imported. The amount produced by my domestic market is still the same, and in total my country uses less of those cars. Should be able to draw this very important, the impact of a tax on the imported and locally produced goods.